remarks. And we do not have much time, my friends, and our singular focus must be on reining in Israel's aggression on its neighbors and on getting an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to stem the catastrophic situation facing 2.3 million people ahead of another bleak winter. We have also called this press conference to remind everyone that history has not begun on one day. This is ongoing for not only 365 days. We shall not just remember the horrific events of the last year. We need to put this into the context of 28,000 days of denial of Palestinian rights ever since 2/3 of the Palestinian people were ethnically cleansed from their homes and lands in the Nakba of 1948, never to be allowed to return. And it is a reminder that almost 80% of Gaza's population are refugees who were ethnically cleansed at the time of the Nakba. 28,000 days of the denial of Palestinian rights and 67 years of an illegal occupation. We need to understand that the issue of Palestine cannot be resolved if we do not resolve the root causes, which, in addition to the right of return of our refugees, includes the Palestinian people's right to self-determination in a state of our own, which Israel has made absolutely clear it will never support. The most recent vote in the Israeli Knesset unequivocally confirmed this position. We do not support and will not allow the creation of a state of Palestine. The piece of legislation in the Israeli parliament stipulated. Friends, if there is one thing we can all agree on, it is this: there is no going back. If you want to look back, you will only find atrocities, decades of atrocities committed by Israel. This is a moment to look forward. And we do, as Palestinians, want to look forward. And the question is, what do we want? What is it? What is this whole fight about? To live in peace and dignity and have our rights, to see a better future for our children, just like everyone else. It's as simple, as humane as that. And what does Israel want? Do they know? What's the end game? Israel is engaged in a war not to defend itself or its people, but to defend its illegal occupation. And this includes a war on demolishing the entire global rules-based order. Israel's strategic outlook is entirely dominated by the use of sheer military power to impose its will rather than diplomacy to reach any agreement. This is why Israel has invaded Lebanon. It has invaded Lebanon to defend its aggression on Gaza. That's it. It is why it engaged in a war of extermination in Gaza, to defend its occupation in the West Bank, including Jerusalem, of course. And let us remember that Israel is engaged in an unprecedented onslaught in the West Bank. You have seen what happened only yesterday in Nablus, this summary execution. You are following what happened in Tulkarem and the use of airstrikes in cafes. You followed the invasion of the Jenin refugee camp and what is happening vis-a-vis the settler violence, settler terrorism on rampage, literally, in the West Bank, and the unprecedented levels of land appropriation and confiscation in the West Bank. And the numbers speak for themselves, my friends. Nearly 42,000 Palestinians, or almost 2% of Gaza's population, have been murdered. And the Lancet produced a conservative estimate, putting the real figure, including those killed of related causes because they cannot get medical attention or from famine and disease, at over 180,000. 90% of Gaza's 2.3 million people, that is 1.9 million people, have been displaced from their homes, and not just once, multiple times. Just this week, Israel issued a new evacuation order for the north of Gaza, declaring that everyone still there, an estimated 400,000, must move south. They aim to depopulate the entire north. Gaza's health sector has been decimated. According to the World Health Organization, some 1,000 health workers have been killed so far. Just 17 of Gaza's 36 hospitals are still in partial operation, but with dramatically reduced capacity. And this while the UN estimates that more than 22,000 people have suffered life-changing injuries and amputations for which there's simply no care. Israel has deliberately targeted the education sector. 80% of schools now and every single university in Gaza has been bombed or completely destroyed, leaving 625,000 school children with no education for the second year in a row. Industry, agriculture, public libraries, bakeries, infrastructure, international aid agencies, Israel has targeted them all. It is hindering the delivery of humanitarian aid, blocking 83% of food aid from entering Gaza, according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. 83% of humanitarian aid is currently, a year on, blocked. 500,000 people are in danger of starvation, and some 50,000 children are in urgent need for treatment from malnutrition. Israel has cut off electricity and fuel supplies and running water to Gaza, as you all have followed, and still the case a year on. You simply cannot look at footage from Gaza, not understand what Israel is doing. And if we want to take a stake of that horrible, horrific last year, we cannot be blind. You would have to be willfully blind if you don't know what is happening. It is a war of extermination. It is genocide, as the ICJ said that this is a plausible genocide and hence put Israel officially on trial for genocide. And what's more, Israel offers no political solution, no pathway to peace, to future horizon that isn't predicated on permanent occupation, continued violence, and impunity from law. It wants to bomb its way to unchallenged supremacy over us and over every country in the region. That's the only option they have. It does not have to be this way, my friends. There is a simple solution. In the illegal occupation, this has the backing not only of the entire Arab and Muslim world, but of the entire world, period. And for decades. It was most clearly expressed recently by the International Court of Justice, which was unequivocal that as per international law, Israel's occupation is unlawful and must end. Israel's settlements are illegal and must be dismantled, and it is the obligation of third states not to support in any way Israel's continued presence in the occupied West Bank, including, of course, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. The UN's General Assembly overwhelmingly supported this ICJ position by a majority of more than 2/3 of the UN's member states, and further demanded that Israel and its illegal presence in occupied territory is illegal. 1 year. There can and must be no return to the status quo ante prior to October 7th, 2023, which led us precisely to where we are today. The only question we must ask ourselves at the moment, therefore, how do we get to where everyone agrees we have to go? First, we must have a ceasefire. We must have clarity about who is the main obstacle to a ceasefire, without which everything else cannot progress. It is Israel that has defied a UN Security Council resolution demanding a ceasefire already in May, that has defied the ICJ demanding a ceasefire, that has defied the constant prompts to ceasefire from the main Western allies and sponsors, including the UK and the US. Hence, the importance that the international order asserts itself by enforcing the UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire, rather than just calling for it. If Israel continues to reject the international law, Israel must be compelled to comply. There are clear mechanisms for this, and to its credit, the UK government has taken some tentative steps on this path. But a partial arms embargo has already proven to have little effect. Effective measures must include a full arms embargo, as called for recently by the French President Emmanuel Macron, as well as sanctions, of course. Such measures, however, must not be reached in a vacuum. We need clarity around the end game for everyone included, and including Israel. For too long now, my friends, Israel has blurred the lines over its occupation, presenting it as if in some areas temporary, in other areas it's disputed territory, even while building settlements that are plainly designed to make it permanent. As per the ICJ, this is turning annexation rather than just military occupation. There can be no more blurring, my friends. A Palestinian state, as the Saudi Foreign Minister, His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, wrote only recently, a few days ago here in the UK, in a newspaper, Financial Times, he says, I quote, "It is a Palestinian state is a prerequisite for peace, not its byproduct." Let us remember that there has been a comprehensive peace offer on the table for 22 years that offers Israel full normalization with the entire Arab world if it ends its occupation and its illegal presence in the occupied territory. 22 years it's been on the table. Already more than 75% of the UN's member states have recognized the State of Palestine, including some of the UK's closest allies in Ireland, Spain, and Norway, and others. It is time the UK followed suit. It is time Israel is disabused of any notion that it can continue with its law-breaking, its occupation, its war crimes, and its creeping annexation. And there must be consequences. The main reason we are here where we are today, for more than 7 decades and still counting, the world simply has allowed Israel to get away with breaking international law at will. Israel has been protected, my friends, and indulged by its Western backers, sponsors, to such an extent that it is now, and it does behave as if it is above all laws. And this, by the way, this unconditional support to Israel by the US and the West in general is not bringing peace to Israel, security to Israel. It is literally pushing Israel and the region, and perhaps the world, off a cliff. And it is allowing Israel to drag all of us into a senseless war. Enough. There must be accountability. There is no accountability. The lesson to everyone else will be clear. International law and the global rules-based order is meaningless. Prohibitions against war crimes and atrocities like the imposed famine on 2.3 million people in Gaza are meaningless if we do not end it in Gaza immediately. This, very starkly, is where we are heading. This, very starkly, is the worst of all possible outcomes. But it is not too late to avert this outcome. We are working with our partners in the region and internationally in an alliance of willing nations to press ahead with a vision of peace that respects international law and the principles of rights and equality for all. We are ready, as the state and the government of Palestine, to serve, protect our people in our entire occupied territory, in a united territory and united people. As Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa said only this last week, we have a comprehensive plan to integrate governance in the West Bank and Gaza to ensure effective relief, recovery, and reconstruction. We are also working on the legal track with our partners worldwide to ensure that international law is respected. That includes, of course, our efforts at the ICC, our efforts at the ICJ, and translating all that into international resolutions. Indeed, to rebuild the credibility of the international system, which Israel has abused for so long and with such impunity. The government of the State of Palestine is the only address to govern Gaza, the West Bank, including Jerusalem, of course, and serve our people wherever they are. There can be no other alternative. Let me make that very clear. There can be no other alternative for Palestine, including Gaza and the West Bank, except the legitimate national institutions and national governance. We have the State of Palestine. That is recognized by the majority of the world. We have the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, which is the government that represents all Palestinians. And the PLO has formed a technocratic government only a few months ago, not made of political factions, but made of professionals to make sure that we can deliver to our people. But to get there requires vision, moral clarity, and political will, particularly on behalf of Israel's supporters and sponsors. I believe all of these exist, but they need to be harnessed soon. Winter is coming to Gaza, my friend, coming to Palestine, coming to the region, coming to the world. If you think the death toll is high now, wait until cold, hunger, and disease really starts to bite. We need to assert the primacy of international law fast to avert further disaster in Gaza and the further eroding of the global rules-based order and the erosion also of our safety, and not just as Palestinians and not just as the Middle East, but I think the safety, the security, the stability worldwide. So time is of essence, and we very much work tirelessly with our partners that we will not commemorate a second year of mass murder, of mass destruction. And soon this carnage ends, and soon we begin the journey to healing.